Hi, Matthew Holt with the Healthcare Blog on the TCB Spotlight. And here are my old friend, Ingrid Lindberg, who is the queen of customer understanding, having spent more time than she would like to admit at where Cigna, Prime, Therapeutics, and a bunch of other places running customer stuff, but now has a whole new startup called Sobrynth. Did I pronounce that correctly?
You did. Good job,
Okay,
Matthew.
Sobrynth. As you may guess by the name, Sobrynth is a tool service organization dedicated to help people with their journey towards sobriety or in sobriety. Number one, with substance use disorder and alcohol use disorder, which Ingrid will tell us, but everyone knows is a big problem in America. Ingrid, okay, this is a little bit different for you. It's a startup. You've been big companies, number one. And number two, it's about a particular cause. So why sobriety? Why alcohol use disorder? Why a startup? Why are you doing this now?
Oh my God, Matthew, that's 10 questions. Hi, great to see you, my friend.
Great to see
So
you.
first of all, this is my fifth startup. Thank you very much. You've got to count Definity Health back in the day because that was the
Oh, that was
beginning
like a really
startup.
well-funded startup. That wasn't like
It was a well-funded
that was
startup,
like they
but
had lots of money and then United gave them even more.
bootstrapped a few, built one that's still going called Chief Customer. I mean, come on, Matthew, this is
Okay,
not my first startup.
unfair, but I've
Fair,
always known
fair.
you as being a big company.
Yeah, I did. After Definity, I spent a lot of time in big companies for sure, but retired from those in 2015 and have been doing fun things to start new things ever since. So Genesis of Sobrynth, my co-founder, Marin Nelson, was actually at Salesforce for many years, and she was at Salesforce during COVID. And she has now been in recovery for 20 years. And whilst at Salesforce during COVID, Salesforce, like many employers, would just send boxes of wine to their employees and have toasts.
That's why I needed a job. No one sent me a box of wine.
I could have sent you a box of wine. I was sending out boxes of
I
wine.
actually sent out a few boxes of wine from one project I did, but anyway, go on.
Well, so she and a couple of other sales leaders got together. They created something that was called Sober Force. It was the first of its kind employee resource group for people who were sober. That was back in 2020. They had 500 people who signed up in the first 5 months, which is an incredible number. The thing is still going strong. All of the founders are long gone. But what they did was really build a sober support group at Salesforce. I have been mentoring Marin for 20 years. I met her when she was I call her a baby salesperson back in the Silverlink days, Matthew.
I remember
Back in the
Silverlink.
Silver.
Many people won't.
A lot, I know, a lot of people from the
Somewhere
Silverlink
buried
days.
in Sharecare, I believe. I
What was that?
think it's buried in Sharecare, isn't it? Buried in.
No,
I can't remember. Anyway,
so many people, so many people.
somewhere buried anyway.
Well, so mentoring her for a long time, she, after building Soberforce, got a bunch of interesting requests from Oracle to IBM to the White House asking her how she had built what she'd built at Salesforce. And frankly, the more we talked about it, the more I was just convinced that there was a greater need than simply doing, employee resource groups as a consultancy. And we put our heads together and really got to the root of the problem, which is currently, there's nowhere for people to go within the employer structure when they need help. So that's why we started it.
So let's talk about that a second. There is an old organization called AA that people can go to and have done forever, right? There are a number of other number of other startups. I'm thinking of Tempest and I'm breaking on some others that have raised money to do this kind of DTC. In fact,
Sunnyside. Yep, there's
so
lots.
some other a number of others, not a space I know particularly well, but and then of course in the substance abuse rather than alcohol use, or there's a whole plethora of sort of mental health companies, particularly aimed obviously at opioids and others, but mostly doing this for Medicaid. I'm thinking of Boulder Care and many others. What is the gap? You're a person who understands the employer world, the employer benefits world. What is the gap, and what happens in the employer world if they're looking to do a program like this now?
So what's super interesting is there's lots of great solutions in Medicaid. There's a few in Medicare. There's almost zero in commercial. So if I am someone who is currently employed by an employer and I need help with substance use disorder, whether it's for myself or for my family member or for an employee, God forbid, right, someone on my team, the process steps I would go through today are I would call EAP or I would call HR. EAP would direct me to my insurance company. We all know how many people do not have insurance, and that's not even an option if inpatient treatment runs between $35,000 and $60,000 for one inpatient treatment, and most people need 5 to 7 in order to actually maintain long-term sobriety. you hit a wall really fast, whether it's a monetary wall, whether it's an access wall. And so what we are trying to do is bridge that gap between having a customer service rep answer a phone and say, hey, just go to insurance and just go to inpatient, because we know that there are a plethora of services that sit in the middle of that. So it would literally be like someone having diabetes as a diagnosis for the first time and being sent directly to amputation, right? I mean, that's what we do. Instead of saying, hey, perhaps we should explore some diet and exercise. Perhaps we should explore metformin. Perhaps we should explore, right? So we're trying to take that space in the middle where there's currently nothing being offered in the employer world.
Okay, so right now you think your competition is this random stuff. There are companies that look like Sobrynth. So what is your approach? So, and again, this is not an area I know a great deal about, but what is, as opposed to people who are doing sort of DTC community and substance use disorder and coaching, I know there are a couple who are doing sorry, what is the drug that people get given to not drink or not drink as much?
There's lots. So there's lots of medication adherence and lots of therapies out there,
right?
lots of companies going into that space. Yep, we're not doing any of that.
Okay. But I mean, as opposed to doing that, what is your approach when you come into a new employer?
Sure. So what we start with is we start with a 90-day cultural change management program. So you know this, Matthew, I've been changing large scale institutions for the last 20 years of my life. So we took everything that I've learned there, plus what we learned from Salesforce and starting Soberforce, and we start with the executive team, and we've got a full process that we take teams through for 90 days, where we ask for an executive sponsor to stand up and say, I want this company to become recovery friendly, which really just means it's safe to ask for help. This is the most stigmatized thing out there still. We did such a great job with behavioral health in the last 5 to 7 years, right? Everyone talks about their therapist now. It's absolutely fabulous. You don't hear people talking about the fact that they are in rehab. You don't hear people talking about the fact that they're an addict. So, first of all, we make it safe for someone who's an employee to go and ask help. We have been able to figure out that if we take someone through, an employer through this 90-day program, and we have very specific examples where a manager will have a team meeting, we then know that we will get people to reach out to us. So it is all about making it safe for someone to actually feel like they can ask for help. After we've gone through those 90 days, we turn on a 24/7, 365 phone line. I am such a firm believer in care needs never happen Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. They always happen at 3 o'clock in the morning or at 6 a.m. or never when someone is available. So we're available all times. And then, of course, you can also come in via a platform to us if you would like. And then you are greeted with a peer coach who is a certified peer recovery specialist. It's a model that's been being used in Medicaid for years. It is someone who has been sober for anywhere between a year to 2 years to more. Every state has its own certification. Every state has its own set of rules for what getting that certification means. But these are all people who have been there and who have lived through it and have found their way through and out of that labyrinth. And they're the ones who can help and guide. And it's absolutely incredible when you match someone who is in that moment with someone who has been in that moment versus a clinician or a me. I don't have the right skill set. I don't have the empathy. I haven't been there. I haven't done it. But when we can match one of our coaches to someone who actually needs help to figure out how to navigate where to get care, how to have a conversation, how to stay sober, it's pretty magical.
So we're going to dive in and take a look at what it actually looks like on the platform in a second. But first, just that 90-day intro thing, that's probably more commitment than the average employer group gives to any other thing I can think of, probably as a whole in their company, let alone, something that's like a health, a benefit that applies to the health and mental wellness of a minority of their company. How big a problem is it in companies? How many people are in some way addicted, and and how much problem is this causing? And then how easy is it to convince a management team that, hey, you actually have to pay attention to us, these outsiders, for a 3-month period where we're running on this program, you're going to have to get involved. So how big a problem and how easy is the sale, quote unquote?
So problem is astronomical. SAMHSA tells us it's 48.5 million Americans have substance use disorder. So that includes all substances, 48.5 millions, which generates to about 1 in 10 employees are actively suffering with substance use disorder. There's about 20 million people who are in recovery and are sober now. So those are people who are currently sober, plus that 48.5. And then the stat that really hits me and brings me into this, because I grew up in a family with alcoholism, is that 2 out of 3 families have substance use disorder in their family in America today.
Oh.
And I will tell you, I have not sat down at a single meeting when we haven't used that stat. And 2 out of 3 people in the room look down because we all have it.
Yeah.
Every single one of us has it. We have watched colleagues be fired. We have watched family members die. We have grown up in it. I mean, it is pervasive. So it's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do to actually try to remove the stigma, try to make it safe for your employees to get help. We know that if we can get upstream and it isn't 5 to 7 times an inpatient, there's a cost savings. But even more frightening is there's actually this lovely calculator that I can share with you that gives you state by state, industry by industry, what your cost is. So we were running the calculator for a potential employer not that long ago, and they had 1,000 employees, and it was like $1.2 million in expense based on the state and the industry that their employees were in every year that they are paying for untreated substance use disorder. And I hate talking about presenteeism and absenteeism, but this is simple, right? If you have someone who's struggling with substance use disorder, you have higher rates of absenteeism, you have lower rates of presenteeism. We know that it's the 3rd leading carcinogen in the world right now. I mean, there's just so much data, yet we only have 10 ICD-10 codes for substance use disorder. So we're not tracking it very well. You can come into the emergency room, you can clearly be under the influence of something. You could have been in a catastrophic accident, and it is highly unlikely that you are going to be coded as one of those 10 ICD-10 codes.
But I mean, you are talking about things like, factory workers and warehouse workers and God knows, having accidents and problems and, costing themselves, costing the company money. Obviously, you have people making mistakes at work. You have the odd story of the airline pilot, who good knows is pulled off for being drunk. This stuff happens, right? And it obviously has big ramifications. And
Construction, Matthew, 65% of workplace injuries in construction are due to substance use disorder. And I have to joke. You've known me for a long time. I use self-deprecation and lots of humor because we're talking about really tough subjects, and that's how I do it. But I think about how many situations I was in through those 20 years in great big companies where there was a lot of alcohol fueling corporate events where some really inappropriate things happened. And you just start thinking about the number of sexual harassment claims, termination claims. I mean, I have story upon story upon story that I can tell of just the things I saw in the companies I worked in. Right? I mean, we know that it's pervasive across all industries. So, I mean, we talk about, well, this industry is a little bit higher than that. Frankly, it's like healthcare and financial services.
So, how easy is the discussion? But you still are asking for a management team to do something they haven't done before. So, how easy is that discussion? How much of a barrier to the sale is that?
So, it's really interesting, right? So, it depends on who the leadership team is. One of the things that we have to find is someone in that leadership team who's willing to tell their own story, whether it's about themselves or about a family member. And what we have learned is if we can get through the sale and then we sit down with that executive team, we have never hit a situation where we've not found someone to raise their hand almost immediately. And in some cases, multiple people. So the sale is about, look, we have to prove to you that there's a pretty significant cost savings in addition to it's the right thing to do. You're going to have to manage your claims. You're going to have to study your data. But what we've learned, and I think it's one of the most fascinating things, having been in this industry for so long and seen all the point solutions, we literally just have to say to someone, have you taken one of those calls? Have you taken one of these calls from one of your employees? I don't know what to do about my child. I don't know what to do about myself. I don't know what to do about my spouse. And we haven't found someone yet who said, no, I haven't taken one of those calls. And if you've taken one of those calls, you know that there's just no easy way to find help right now.
All right. So you've done your 90 days.
Yep.
It gets launched to the employee population. How? And then what does it look like?
So how? We do a huge push, right? All of the normal communication channels, but it's all employer driven. Because again, what we've learned is that we have to stay away, right? So this has to be a decoupling from insurance. It has to be a decoupling from the employer. So you're coming to us, it is free and confidential, and we repeat that everywhere and in every language we can. Free and confidential, free and confidential. What happens first is we turn on the 1-800 phone line, and that's 24/7, 365. And it's pretty incredible. As soon as we turn that on, as we go through that, site by site or GM by GM or leader by leader, we see the calls. So that's the first thing. The platform comes up as well. We introduce everybody to the platform. It's a very simple entry. You know, we designed it with 3 things, right? It had to be simple to use. It had to be really easy to find information. And most important, it had to look really familiar because we wanted it to act like everything else I use as a consumer, right? So take away all the jargon, take away all the extra codes, just make it as simple as possible. So you come in, you've got access to the phone line, you've got access to the platform, both of which you can access without having to use anything from your employer other than a code. So there's nothing that's personally identifiable for you. And then you're in.
All right. So why don't you pull it up and show us what the web experience, the app experience looks like?
Cool. Can you see it? Say yes to
Yeah.
me, Matthew. Thank you. So we've got a couple of options. I think it's really important. As we've been talking, we haven't actually talked about the fact that instead of just solving for people who are sober or wanting to get sober, we're also really focused on people who are interested in sober curiosity and the sober curiosity movement. So we've got a couple of different pathways that we take people down. And we'll just start with the sober mobile flow because that's one of my favorites. But you come in, it's really easy. You're here, you're telling us, how long you've been sober for. We give people the opportunity to keep their day count, for people to get badging, for people to be able to really keep that everyday counts moving forward. We know that at the first 30, 60, 90, up to 2 years, those are the most critical times for day count. We also know that if someone's been sober for 20 years, they're coming in here and they're literally swiping a month at a time. I've been sober for a month. I've been sober for a month. They're still coming in though.
But if they're coming for a day, they're literally just clicking on the thing saying I was sober today.
They literally are. They come in and they put their thumbprint on log a day, and that gives them a log a day.
Cool. So that is a thumbprint. It's not a cool.
It's a thumbprint.
Right.
Yep, it's a thumbprint. It's my thumbprint. I put mine on there. I'm sober today. Thank you. We also, what was that?
No, go ahead. Keep going.
Okay. We've also brought all those peer recovery coaches. So Tinder for coaching, you can go through and you can find someone who looks like you, feels like you, has a story like you, has goals like you, and you can book them right online. And throughout the entire process, I'm a big fan, and I think you know this, Matthew. I hate when companies hide phone numbers on how to contact. Like that should be the most prevalent thing everywhere. So it's all over the place. So the dedicated phone number for you as the employer is sitting all over the place. So at any point in time, if you need help right now and you don't want to set up a meeting for later, we've brought you here. Just call us. Here's your dedicated number.
And then just a technical thing. If I now go to the coach, if I now say, okay, I want to talk to Evelyn and book a time somewhere on this, there's an appointment book. Am I then giving her my phone number? She's calling me, or I'm calling her, or something, or is that within the app?
Yep. So it's all automated, right? So you fill out a little intake form. How would you like to be contacted? What time? You choose your time, and then there's an auto ring out to you at that time. So we do the outbound call to get to you.
And how does that get paid for by you get a certain amount of calls as a company within this range that pay for separately by the employer for each one they use? How is that?
We've got so many different models, Matthew.
Okay.
We've got some just flat PEPMs. We've got some utilization based. We have some, you get freebies up to this many per month, and then you start getting charged.
But this is a free program for the employee, the person.
100%.
Okay. So, and there's a way that you're working in the background for this, but you can start to figure out as you go down the path eventual, hard ROI, I suspect, for this. And then, and these are the peer coaches, and it's just, are they in general voice-based, or are they using, what do people like these days? People like text for this? Does it
any channel you want? The intake has to be done.
Yeah.
The intake has to be done literally through a phone call, right? But post intake, you can choose any channel you would like.
And what's the level of connection between the typical connection when you get into this between somebody who's using a peer coach like this? Is this once a week, once a day, 3 a.m? You hear these things about people, calling their sponsor at AA when they're having trouble at 3 a.m. Does this stuff work here too?
I think it completely depends on the person. So we have some users who come in once, they find a coach, they are just looking for help to try to figure out how to have a conversation. We never hear from them again. We have people who come in who are in need of help right now to stay sober, and they're going to need help on a daily basis, but it's completely up to the user. So the thing that we ask at the end of every interaction is, when would you like to talk next? It's completely up to you. It's your journey. We are here to support judgment free, and we have no limits on the number of times you can call us. So we're using subclinical resources, so it's a little bit easier, right? It's a different pay model. And we've got people who are receiving text messages back and forth every day. We have people who are sitting down for an hour-long chat once a week.
And if I can't get, in this case, Evelyn, I can call that general number and get somebody.
100%. So if any of the coaches that you connect with aren't available, within the time period that you need, you can just pick up the phone and call, and somebody's going to answer, and we're going to get you through there.
All right, fantastic. All right, so keep going, because you were telling me some other features there. This is the story part.
So we've got the stories. I was teasing a little bit earlier with another friend of mine, and I was talking about the fact that we've been collecting all of these stories and built this beautiful library of stories of people who have gone through this, right? So these are all of their stories of recovery. And unlike the traditional like or dislike, we really decided that it was about connecting to stories. So you'll see this kind of pervasively through, right? The thumbprint, that it's mine, it's my why, it's my photo, it's my color, all the things, right? But it's about that connection to self and being able to come back and find stories that you connected to. We've built the whole content library, right? One of our board of advisors members is Marv Seppala, who is the chief medical officer at Hidden Betty Ford for 27 years. So, we've got all the approved, communications and styles here, but conversation guides about how do I have a conversation with my spouse, my child, my employee, support. I am recently sober. I am going to a corporate event for the very first time. How do I avoid drinking at that corporate event? All the way through to FAQs, which are things like, hey, I have a 10-year-old and I just found a juice box and it smells like weed. Is it a bong? So we can tell you what that looks like. Sound familiar, Matthew?
When I was
Hopefully
10,
not.
we didn't have juice boxes, let alone marijuana.
There were cans. There were cans.
Speaking as a big advocate of legalizing and deregulating drugs, I have some questions about how we are allowed to sell marijuana, considering we're allowed to sell it in ways we aren't allowed to sell alcohol, but that's a separate topic. But nonetheless,
that'll be our next chat.
That's a separate chat. And I have a friend who runs, I think, the biggest marijuana sobriety Reddit group. I don't know. You guys should probably talk at some point. Separate question.
Probably know them.
All right. But back to where you are. So what else you got? You get a badge. AA gives you a coin, right?
AA gives you a coin. AA gives you a coin. And it's been really interesting to me, not being someone who's in recovery myself, being someone who's new to this space, right? So 2 years new to this space. And one of the things that I said to my co-founder and to our team was, I don't understand why people hide this so much. And I think that if you have been sober for 60 days or 90 days or 20 years or 30 days, depending on your goal, we wanted to create opportunities for people to actually celebrate those huge milestones because they're really important. So something as simple as badging in this space is brand new. It's brand new outside of the coin that you get if you happen to have used AA as your pathway. There's 1,000 other pathways, right? So we started to see people actually using it on LinkedIn, which has been really exciting for us. So just simple stuff there. I think the big difference here between sober and sober curious, if you come in and you say that you're sober curious, the thing that we bring up other than the how many days have you been sober is we're just taking all of the challenge methodology that you would use for Nike or Weight Watchers or anyone else, right? And create a challenge. So week by week, you can actually challenge yourself around how many days are you going to drink or other. It was really interesting to come up with a word for all other, but other works here, right? Other works. And then frankly, planning your use, right? Because if you have the opportunity to choose how many drinks you're going to have in a week, and you have the opportunity to choose what days you're going to have those drinks, and then you come through and we're seeing that people will actually come in and log each day. I said I was going to have 2 drinks today. I said I was going to have 1.5 drinks on Saturday. I did it. I won. Dry Januaries, dry Julys. We do challenges for different employers that are different that they're using at the corporate level that they all come to the app to use. But it's a really simple and really intuitive and very easy to use because that was the goal. So that's what we're up to.
Our companies on that corporate challenge, our companies publicizing results of the corporate challenge. So in other words, like, because you kind of had these biggest loser challenges at one point, and then so they'll say, well, now you're being discriminated against people who have issues with obesity and what have you. But there are these. I remember we had a steps challenge at Health 2.0 at one point.
Oh yeah, in 2006 we were launching that you've got to hit 10,000 for the first time, when we handed out the free Fitbits to everybody, right?
But I mean, but this is like a site, there are some people who think that they do or don't need sober challenges, whatever. I mean, are these publicized? Are people sharing these things individually with the corporation? Or is it, again, sort of more private? I mean, you can obviously share it on LinkedIn if you want to talk about your
You can if
sobriety,
you
and
want
people
to.
have
And
to.
where we're seeing the sharing happen specifically is within those employee resource groups that we're setting up for those who are sober and sober curious or sober supporters, right? So anyone who comes into that ERG, that's where we're seeing the highest utilization with aggregation and sharing.
So people are
Right.
sharing that within that group of current employees, and it's sort of a support
Yep.
network, I guess, for them. Yeah, very, very good.
Yep. So
I
it's
just wonder
interesting.
how people were, taking it. I mean, you do have the possibility of some issues if people are saying, well, this guy had 3 beers after work or whatever, and it's a support, not an insistence kind of thing.
For sure. This is not about, I jokingly say this is not about taking away your wine in any way, shape, or form. What it is about making it safe for people who don't want wine, because there's a lot of people who don't want it, right? That's number one. Making it easier for people to say no, making them have some options. I mean, I think about every celebration that I ever hosted as an exec at these big companies. We did champagne toasts every time we landed a big deal. I sent wine to all of my employees. I had bourbon tastings for the National Producer Advisory Council. It was all wrapped around booze. And when you look at the stats of 1 out of 10 of every single group was struggling,
Yeah.
I was completely ignoring that.
You
So,
weren't doing, was it WeWork laid off everyone and then brought out vodka shots for people who were left?
I mean, the taps that were in every single startup that I've ever been, I mean, like just the way that we work, right? The way that we work specifically in this country really is pretty alcohol centered. And when you start to look at the
and then you
data,
go to England and Ireland, and I'll show you really alcohol centered.
well, I mean, pub culture is dying in England. Have you been reading about all of this? So the Gen Z in England is completely anti-pub culture now. I mean, it's Matthew, you might lose your favorite pub.
Hopefully not yet. They're all turning into high-end restaurants, unfortunately, or fortunately, when you look at it. Yeah, I mean, but and say a word about that, because there is this sort of sober curiosity and lower rates of drinking amongst Gen Z in general. Do you think that is that so? My impression, I know a lot about it, about addiction as a whole, is that a lot of people try these things, and then a small subgroup, 10, 15, 20%, whatever, cannot get addicted, and just it's their bad luck with the genes or whatever happened, right? And there is your impression that we are seeing lower rates of addiction, or is it just everybody else is drinking a bit less? What's going on there?
Oh goodness. So we're actually seeing, so the data from SAMHSA shows that we're seeing higher levels of addiction. COVID did not help us, right? So I just go back to the numbers, the 48.5 million Americans active substance use disorder. We were having a meeting with another research firm a couple of weeks ago, and they shared that 35% of Americans are sub-threshold in their drinking to actually being at a clinical SUD diagnosis. So 46.5 million, and then 35% of Americans are just sub-threshold for that. We've got a lot of drinking. Boomers are drinking more than any other generation before. And if we're just going into full out opinion, because you know me, it's about the data, right? Show me the data. I don't care about your opinion. Your opinion, although interesting, is irrelevant, is one of my favorite lines. My opinion, we have a lot of kids who saw their parents drinking a ton. You're seeing a lot less kind of socialization. My 20s were filled with going to bars and clubs and fancy dinners. That's not how these kids are socializing, right? So are we going to see a shift? I don't know. But we are seeing a super increase in boomers drinking. So
I mean, I understand the boomers thing and the elderly, and that happens. That's kind of a natural thing, and natural. That's kind of a cultural thing and has been for a while. My sense is that I'm not sure that you're seeing less addiction amongst even if it's lower rates of drinking. And I also, I suspect that there is. I don't know, and I'm actually going to be talking to folks at Boulder Care in a couple of weeks about this. I don't know what's going on with the kind of, the serious SUDs around opiates and fentanyl, all the other stuff from the deaths we're getting. A lot of that obviously is mixed up with the illegality and the mixing of fentanyl into the supply chain. There's a lot of stuff going on there which is not in the alcohol order. But I would be interested in figuring out if there is actually lower rates of addiction to alcohol rather than people who are, managing it in those younger Generation Z's, Gen Z folks. But that's. But
we'll see as time goes.
But by the way, that I know people in Gen Z don't believe it, but the boomers are still around. Some of us are still working, and that Generation X group in the middle is,
That's me.
I know.
I'm that Gen Xer.
Actually, here's your fun stat. I believe in America I'm a boomer, but in England I think the boom ended in '62. I don't think the British could males could push through the way the American men can. I think I'm a Gen X in England.
I will keep you as a part of our generation, Matthew. You can be an honorary member.
I can. I feel like a Gen Z kid.
What?
I feel like a Gen Z kid. I'm still getting off the Katy Perry and stuff. Anyway, I want to say that. I mean to her music. To be clear. All right.
No, you're salty. You're salty. You're a Gen X. Just own it.
So let's get back on it. So we have this big problem. You have a specific approach in which you're coming in. You're to selling it company by company. Mm-hmm. How are you? And then give me a sense of the scale. You've only been doing this 3 months now? So
2 years. 2 years.
2 years. So how long has the product been in the market?
We launched in June of 2025.
That's this year.
June of 2024. Oh my gosh.
Okay.
So
a year.
I warned you. June of 2024, we turned on the telephonic and the email. June of 2025, we turned on the platform.
Okay. So the app you showed me is actually only 2 months old. Yep. The program has been going for a while. Give me a sense of where you are as a company. How many client groups are you in? What does it look like? And then back to the sort of the boring startup stuff. How does this become a really big business? Can you scale this 3 month one company approach? Just give me a sense when you're out there talking to the sort of the VCs of the world. How are you explaining where you're going to go with the company?
Oh, for sure. So we are in construction, we are in hospitality, and we are in high-end advertising. Okay. We are in
seen
finance.
That Mad Men show. I've heard that they drink a lot of that.
Totally. It's
you
really
may be 50 years too late or 60.
Well, you'd be surprised. What we wanted to do to start though was we really wanted to do a broad swath of different industries, right? Because it's about vertical, because then we can do vertical by vertical, what works, what doesn't work, because that's how we learn how to scale, right? If you do the scatter graph and you think that one thing is going to fit everyone, that's not how it works. So we're learning the construction as a very different approach than what we were doing in hospitality. And this type of a hospitality company versus this type of a hospitality company are pretty close. There's a few changes, but we're very vertically centered because it's important to understand that high-end professional services, hospitality as a whole, and then again, construction, because 65% of workforce injuries in construction are due to substance use disorder. So great places for us to start. As far as can we scale, what we are fascinated by is, so we're using subclinical resources, right? They are, I will say, easier to access, primarily because the reputation that we're building in the marketplace, and we're paying more. And we've figured out a way to be able to scale very easily and do that implementation based on size of company. Some are high touch, some are lower touch, but we've automated a bunch of it. Right? We've automated as much as we can. And it really is a workbook that we hand to you so that you can walk through and actually execute on these things without having us to do 100% high touch. We can be with you throughout the entire process if you would like, but that's up to you as a buyer. So the scale piece is really interesting for us. The state of Georgia has something called Georgia Cares. And the Georgia Cares line has been around for about a decade. They serve 11 million Georgians, and they do that with 9 people.
So the bit that I'm worried about, which is somebody saying I can't get the management team commitment to do that first 90 days, is not that big a problem, and there are ways around scaling that. And then once you're in to the process, the actual level of scale in terms of having peer support, the app, the phone staff, and all that kind of stuff doesn't sound like that big a deal. I think, given you're not getting all 10% of people using the phone at the same time.
On the same day, yep.
On the same
and
day.
We've architected everything to grow, right? I mean, I've been there, done that before a few times. So it's all in the architecture, frankly.
All right. So let's flip it. As a business, did you guys raise any money? Do you need to raise money? What are you going to grow it and have a bunch more pilots. When you're out talking about the business as a business,
Yep.
What's your position there?
So we did a pre-seed round last year. We oversubscribed really fast, which was exciting, especially since you know that 1.8% of venture money goes to female founders, and we're a dual female founder team.
Which
Thank you.
1.8
Here.
squared gets you to 2.03.
Stop. Just
I
stop.
don't know what the number is, but well done.
It was a big deal. You even congratulated me.
Well
so
done. No, no, absolutely, yes.
And frankly, we've had enough success in selling that as of right now, we're doing great. We've got a great runway. We continue to add customers on. And what's fascinating is because we know how to do this in a lean way operationally, right? But having the right level of care. So not limiting how many times you can talk to someone, not, making sure that there's not a wait list to be able to get to someone, making sure that there is someone who can pick up that phone every day, even right now. That's the stuff where it's affording. We have built this in such a way that it's affording our opportunity there to be able to make sure that that high touch, great customer experience sits on the front end without sucking out anything from the back. So it's fun right now, Matthew.
So so you have gone through the stage where I call it like, you've gone past the MVP, you've gone through figuring out the first, how many N number of customers.
And 100% retention. Everybody's resigning with us.
How many employer customers are we talking about? Give me a range.
I'm not telling you right now.
Okay.
But we've got enough that we've got almost scale for good result in pilots, because I can actually say this versus this versus this.
Okay, so you can talk about. So the can you do and compete with the people who've got the mega rounds in mental health and EAP and whatever? Can you compete with them, or do you have to end up partnering with them and or the Mercers or whomever to do the bit where you go from a few to a handful to 10 to how many employers need this? 10 million.
Right, all.
How many employers are there in America? Right, I mean,
all.
You know what I mean.
So right now,
that growth part. How well set up are you for that?
So we're having conversations with everyone from MMA to Mercer to, Shoes, right? What has been fascinating, again, too many years in this industry. So when I walk out to all of my producer, broker, consultancy partners, and I'm like, hey, we're building this thing. And they say, we don't even have a category for that right now. We have to go into our system and build a category for that. And then you start talking math, and then suddenly there's a category built for it. And then they're very excited about the fact that there's a solution for this category that didn't exist in their system 20 minutes before. And so that's been really fascinating and very reassuring. We are receiving, and I laugh a little bit, but we're getting inbound. We're literally getting inbound hits off of the website, Matthew, from CHROs reaching out to us and saying, I heard about you from another CHRO. Can you come and talk to us? There's not anything that sits out there that is the cultural change plus the high touch concierge for SUD. And marrying those two things together, that's the magic right now.
Fantastic.
So our growth will come from a lot of different places.
Inbound demand is the finest thing I understand. Given the amount of emails I get, or given the amount of LinkedIn requests I get talking about how the healthcare blog, which somehow got categorized as a hospital, needs to figure out its emergency room staffing or whatever people are offering me with their new AI thing every day. Somebody who's calling you up and actually knows what you have and has a vague idea they want it. That's the best kind of sale. That's the best kind of lead to get.
It's beautiful. Well, and I think the reality is I'll go back to that stat, right? And I for as kind of joyous and humorous as I try to be in living my life, it's a really big problem. It's a really big problem, and it really impacts a ton of people. And when we were first starting out, we were doing some research, and we haven't been able to find anything definitive, but just in doing the ethnography and talking to people about how long did it take you to find a place for your 16-year-old daughter that was safe for her, had a bed available, had a belief structure that she was going to be okay with. 46 to 48 hours, Matthew. 46 to 48 hours. So one of the first things that we did was we built a nationwide resource directory to capture, so a provider directory for SUD, for inpatient, outpatient, for AA, for non-denominational, for community groups, for recovery community organizations, because it didn't exist anywhere. Yeah. And so we've done that. Our coaches know how to navigate it. We can turn those answers around for someone in like 45 minutes, and we can make the phone calls because we've got the contact at the place to find out, do you have a bed? Can you take that 16-year-old girl? And when is the intake day? 46 to 48 hours.
Oh,
And if you don't think that there's not someone on your team who's doing that right at this very moment, you're wrong, right? I mean, that's what's just incredible to me. So hearing from people in our generation who are dealing with parents and kids who both are having active SUD issues, it's just, it's pretty overwhelming. It's a big problem, and we're not talking about it, and I'm not sure why.
well, we are.
We
That's the
are.
good news. All right. Okay. I've been talking with Ingrid Lindberg. She is the CEO of Sobrynth, which, as you just heard, is about to make, well, is making inroads. They're about to make a really big push in employer-based substance abuse and alcohol use disorder solutions. Treatments?
I like solutions.
Solutions.
We're solving problems. We're navigating pathways. So many things we could say,
Brilliant.
Matthew.
Thanks. Ingrid, thanks for your time. Congrats on what you've been doing.
Thanks, Matthew. Great to see you as always.